The desert sky was supposed to belong to the Eagle. For decades, pilots of the F-15 had repeated the same proud statistic, never defeated in air-to-air combat. It was a legend forged in afterburner flame and radar locks, built over battlefields stretching from the Middle East to the Balkans. But legends have a weakness. They assume the enemy will fight the same way every time. On a wind-scarred afternoon near a tense border zone, radar screens flickered with contacts that should not have been there. The controllers thought they were ghosts, ground clutter, electronic noise, perhaps even friendly returns distorted by terrain. The Eagles pushed forward confidently, high and fast, trusting their altitude advantage and powerful radar. Then the sky shifted. Low over the mountains, skimming beneath radar coverage, a formation of MiG-29s surged upward like sharks rising from deep water. Their engines howled in unison as they broke formation and climbed aggressively. Within seconds, the confident geometry of American air dominance fractured into chaos. Missile warnings screamed. Pilots jerked their heads skyward, searching for shapes they had not expected to see so close. What followed was not just a dogfight. It was a collision of doctrines, Soviet ambush tactics versus American air superiority philosophy. It was a contest between two of the Cold War's most lethal machines, and for a few terrifying minutes, the sky no longer belonged to the Eagle. This is the story of how MiG-29s ambushed F-15 Eagles, and how that encounter reshaped the mythology of modern air combat. The MiG-29 was born in secrecy during the height of the Cold War. Designed by the legendary Soviet Bureau Mikoyan, it was conceived as a response to the American F-15, a direct answer to the air superiority doctrine emerging from Washington. Where the F-15 emphasized long-range radar engagement and high-altitude dominance, the MiG-29 embraced agility, raw acceleration, and brutal close-range lethality. NATO would eventually assign it the reporting name, Fulcrum, but to its pilots it was something more intimate, a knife built for the sky. Twin engines gave it redundancy and thrust. Its aerodynamics allowed astonishing high-alpha maneuvers, and unlike many Western fighters of its era, it carried an infrared search and track system that could detect aircraft without emitting radar signals. It could see without being seen. By contrast, the F-15 Eagle was a product of American confidence. Developed by McDonnell Douglas, the Eagle embodied lessons learned from Vietnam. It was larger, heavier, and carried a radar powerful enough to scan vast distances. Its pilots trained relentlessly for beyond visual range engagements. The Eagle climbed higher, struck first, and expected the fight to be decided before a dogfight even began. But doctrine shapes expectation, and expectation can become vulnerability. The confrontation that would later inspire whispered debriefings began not as a declared war, but as a high-tension patrol. Intelligence had warned of increased MiG activity near a contested frontier. Satellite images hinted at forward deployment. Signals intercepts suggested aggressive rules of engagement. The Eagles were sent to assert presence. 4 aircraft, flying in combat spread, cruising at altitude. Their radar painted the airspace clean. Nothing unusual. Far below, hugging terrain, the MiG-29s were executing a tactic honed in exercises across Eastern Europe. Ground controllers vectored them through valleys, using mountains as shields. Their radars remained silent. Only passive sensors scanned the sky. The plan was simple. Approach unseen, climb rapidly, fire at close range, and disengage before the enemy understood what had happened. Timing was everything. When the lead MiG pilot received the coded command, he pushed his throttles forward. Twin Klimov engines roared. The Fulcrums pulled into steep climbs, breaking through the thin cloud layer beneath the Eagles. For the American formation, the first sign of danger was not visual, it was electronic. Radar warning receivers erupted with alarms. Spike! 12 o'clock low. The calm geometry of patrol shattered. Eagles rolled and dove, trying to reacquire situational awareness. But the MiGs were already inside the engagement envelope. Infrared missiles streaked upward, their seekers locking onto the heat signatures of afterburning engines. One Eagle pilot would later describe the moment as surreal. like the sky had opened beneath us. The first missile missed, flaring past as countermeasures blossomed in golden bursts. The second detonated close enough to rattle metal and rattle nerves. Suddenly, altitude advantage meant nothing. The fight compressed into a tight, twisting melee. The MiG-29 excelled here. Its high alpha capability allowed it to pitch aggressively without stalling. Pilots yanked their sticks, pulling the aircraft into impossible angles. Within seconds, contrails spiraled into chaotic corkscrews. But the Eagle was not helpless prey. Its power-to-weight ratio allowed rapid vertical maneuvers. American pilots transitioned instinctively into energy management tactics: climb, dive, extend, re-engage. The sky filled with overlapping missile trails and chaff clouds. For nearly 5 minutes, advantage shifted back and forth. Radar locks broke and reformed. Pilots strained under G forces that blurred vision and compressed breath. And then, just as quickly as they had appeared, the MiGs disengaged. Dropping back toward terrain cover, they accelerated away. The ambush had not destroyed the Eagle formation, but it had done something almost as significant. It had proven vulnerability. Back at base, debrief rooms were silent. Radar tapes were replayed repeatedly. Analysts circled moments where detection should have occurred earlier. The myth of untouchable altitude dominance had cracked. The MiG-29 had demonstrated that surprise, terrain masking, and close-range aggression could neutralize technological superiority. The ambush became a classified lesson, and both sides began adapting. Air combat is not only metal and missiles. It is philosophy. The Eagle's doctrine emphasized first look, first shot, first kill. Its radar, paired with advanced missiles, allowed engagements beyond visual range. American training prioritized coordination, data sharing, and layered defense. The MiG-29 doctrine, shaped by Soviet operational art, integrated tightly with ground control. Pilots were often guided minute by controllers watching larger strategic pictures. In the ambush scenario, that integration had been decisive. Following the encounter, Eagle squadrons adjusted patrol altitudes and radar scanning patterns. They began simulating low-probability ambushes and training. Meanwhile, MiG units refined terrain, masking tactics, and emphasized rapid disengagement. The next meeting between these aircraft would not be accidental. It would occur under observation, in joint exercises years later, after geopolitical lines shifted and former adversaries briefly trained together. In one such exercise, Western pilots finally faced the Fulcrum in mock combat. Many were stunned by its instantaneous turn rate at slow speed. One Eagle pilot admitted that inside visual range, it could point its nose at you faster than you expected. Yet technology continued evolving. The F-15 received upgraded avionics. New missiles extended its reach. Electronic warfare suites improved survivability. Meanwhile, MiG-29 variants incorporated better radar and helmet-mounted sights, enabling off-bore sight missile shots that changed dogfighting geometry entirely. The rivalry became less about a single ambush and more about adaptation cycles. Each side studied the other relentlessly. The original ambush never became headline news. It lived in after-action reports and pilot folklore. But its implications rippled outward. It reminded strategists that no platform is invincible. It forced re-evaluation of air superiority assumptions. The F-15 would continue building its combat record in real conflicts, earning its fearsome reputation. The MiG-29 would serve across dozens of air forces, proving adaptable and resilient. In later wars, both aircraft would encounter new threats: surface-to-air missiles, stealth fighters, advanced drones. Yet among aviators, one lesson endured: the sky punishes complacency. On that tense afternoon when Fulcrums rose from beneath the mountains, the Eagle learned humility. And in modern warfare, humility is survival. The encounter did not crown a new king of the sky. Instead, it revealed a truth that transcends any single aircraft: dominance is temporary. Awareness, adaptation, and training decide outcomes. In the endless expanse above the Earth, where speed compresses time and decisions last milliseconds, even legends must look over their shoulders. Because somewhere below the radar horizon, Another hunter may already be climbing. When the Cold War thawed and former adversaries cautiously opened hangar doors to one another, the myth and the machine finally met face to face. For decades, the MiG-29 had existed in Western imagination as a shadow, glimpsed through grainy satellite imagery, analyzed through intelligence briefings, feared in abstract performance charts. Now on sun-bleached tarmacs in Europe, NATO pilots walked directly up to the aircraft that had once risen from beneath their radar screens. The first joint evaluations were almost surreal. American and European crews studied the Fulcrum's compact frame, its widely spaced twin engines, its massive leading edge root extensions designed for high angles of attack. Technicians peered into cockpit layouts that felt alien compared to Western avionics philosophy. The MiG's helmet-mounted sight system drew particular attention, a feature that allowed a pilot to lock a missile simply by looking at the target. In close combat, that was revolutionary. When mock dogfights began, the results were sobering and electrifying at the same time. F-15 pilots who had grown accustomed to controlling engagements from distance suddenly found themselves dragged into slow, speed-turning battles where the Fulcrum thrived. In tight merges, the MiG-29 could pivot aggressively, its nose slicing across the sky with alarming authority. There were moments, brief but unforgettable, when Eagle drivers realized that if they had entered visual range unprepared, the outcome could have been lethal. But exercises are laboratories of adaptation. The F-15 Eagle was never designed to surrender the advantage easily. Eagle crews refined energy tactics, maintaining speed discipline and vertical separation. They emphasized coordinated engagements, 2-ship and 4-ship tactics designed to overwhelm a single adversary with layered radar coverage. When the fight stayed beyond visual range, the Eagle's strengths reasserted themselves decisively. Observers noted a pattern inside visual range. The Fulcrum could be devastating if the Eagle pilot was careless. Outside visual range, supported by AWACS and data links, the Eagle regained control of the sky. The lessons were mutual. Former Warsaw Pact pilots realized that Western electronic warfare integration was more seamless than anticipated. NATO pilots gained respect for the MiG-29's raw aerodynamic authority. Both sides left the exercises with thicker binders of tactical notes and thinner layers of arrogance. In briefing rooms after each sortie, whiteboards filled with diagrams of merged geometry and missile envelopes. Pilots argued animatedly about seconds and angles. Pride was bruised on both sides, but so was complacency. The ambush that had once occurred in tense isolation now evolved into structured understanding. What had been myth became data, and data reshapes doctrinino rivalry remained static. As the decades turned, upgrades transformed both aircraft into new beasts wearing familiar skins. The MiG-29 received modernized variants with improved radar arrays, digital cockpits, and extended range. Export customers adapted it to diverse climates, from desert heat to maritime humidity. Meanwhile, the Eagle matured into new generations, culminating in advanced iterations like the F-15EX Eagle 2-die, with AESA radar, enhanced electronic warfare suites, and next-generation missiles. The modern Eagle became less a descendant and more an evolution, a machine carrying the DNA of past dominance into an era defined by network-centric warfare. The Fulcrum II evolved, with later versions integrating precision, guided munitions and upgraded sensors. In some air forces, it served not just as an interceptor, but as a multi-role platform capable of ground attack and maritime strike. Yet beneath modernization, the philosophical contrast endured. The MiG lineage emphasized aggressive maneuverability and point-defense lethality. The Eagle lineage emphasized air superiority through reach, information dominance, and layered tactics. Real-world conflicts occasionally placed derivatives of these aircraft into opposing coalitions. Though rarely meeting directly in declared duels, their presence shaped strategic calculations. Commanders understood that any engagement between them would not be a simple comparison of turn rates or thrust. It would be a contest of sensors, support aircraft, pilot training hours, and integrated doctrine. Technology also introduced new variables. Helmet-mounted cueing systems, once a Fulcrum hallmark, became widespread. Beyond visual range missiles grew smarter and deadlier. Electronic warfare blurred radar screens into abstract art. In this new era, the sky became less about who turned tighter and more about who saw first and who remained unseen. Yet even in this digitized battlespace, the memory of that early ambush lingered. It served as a reminder that any platform, no matter how dominant, can be surprised if vigilance falters. In aviation museums and active squadrons alike, the silhouettes of the MiG-29 and the F-15 still command respect. They represent the apex of fourth-generation fighter philosophy, speed, power, maneuverability, and the human pilot at the center of the storm. The ambush story, whether told in classified tones or pilot-bar anecdotes, carries enduring meaning. It is not about one aircraft defeating another. It is about the thin margin between confidence and overconfidence. The Eagle's reputation for invincibility was not shattered, it was tempered. The Fulcrum's aura of stealthy aggression was validated, but also contextualized within the broader reality of integrated warfare. Modern air combat now incorporates stealth fighters, drones, cyber operations, and space-based sensors. Fifth-generation aircraft patrol skies once dominated by Cold War icons. Yet when analysts discuss maneuver warfare and close-range missile envelopes, the MiG-29 and F-15 remain reference points, because they represent something timeless. Two philosophies meeting at supersonic speed. On that day when MiGs rose from beneath the radar horizon and Eagles dove to survive, neither side claimed permanent victory. What they gained instead was clarity. The sky does not belong to any flag or doctrine forever. It belongs to those who adapt fastest, train hardest, and respect their adversary most. In the end, the ambush was not a defeat for the Eagle, nor a final triumph for the Fulcrum. It was a warning written in vapor trails across the upper atmosphere, a reminder that air superiority is earned daily, not inherited, and somewhere, in training airspace above mountains or desert, when two fighters merge head-on at closing speeds beyond imagination. That lesson still echoes through the cockpit. Never assume you own the sky. Long after the classified reports were archived and the exercise footage locked away, the story of the ambush continued to live where all air combat stories truly survive, inside the minds of the pilots who were there. Because beyond radar ranges, beyond missile statistics, beyond political narratives, there is a single raw truth about fighter combat. It happens at human scale. Inside the cockpit of an F-15 Eagle or a MiG-29, it is not geopolitics that decides survival, it is breath control, split-second instinct, and the ability to think clearly while gravity tries to crush you into your seat. Years after that first unexpected encounter, one of the Eagle pilots would describe the merge moment in simple words. I realized we weren't hunting anymore. We were reacting. That sentence carried weight. For decades, F-15 doctrine had emphasized initiative, entering combat on their terms, dictating altitude and geometry. But in that ambush, initiative had shifted. The MiG pilots, too, carried their own memories. Their climb from terrain mask into the thin air above had required absolute trust in ground controllers, and in timing measured down to seconds. If they rose too early, radar would detect them. Too late, and the Eagles would pass overhead untouched. It was a gamble executed with discipline. The ambush proved something that textbooks rarely admit: technology alone does not secure dominance. Surprise does. Coordination does. Courage does. As the 21st century advanced, new aircraft began to dominate headlines. Stealth fighters with internal weapons bays, sensor fusion displays that could paint the battle space in luminous clarity. Aircraft like the F-22 Raptor and the Su-57 promised a different kind of supremacy, one built not just on maneuver but on invisibility. And yet, instructors in advanced fighter schools continued referencing encounters between Eagles and Fulcrums. Why? Because those battles represented the last pure era of visible air combat, where two pilots could lock eyes across canopies and know that the next 10 seconds would define everything. In simulator domes and live-fire ranges, Younger pilots studied gun, camera footage from legacy engagements. They learned how quickly advantage evaporates when situational awareness collapses. They studied how terrain can conceal as effectively as stealth coding. They analyzed how overconfidence narrows perception. The ambush had also sparked deeper cooperation between air forces in peacetime. Joint exercises expanded. Data sharing protocols improved. Pilots who once trained exclusively to defeat one another began flying in mixed formations. Ironically, the confrontation that symbolized rivalry eventually fueled professional respect. One NATO commander summarized it best. "The day we stopped underestimating the MiG was the day we became better Eagle pilots." Meanwhile, the Fulcrums' legacy endured across multiple nations. Some upgraded their fleets, others phased them out in favor of newer designs. But wherever MiG-29 still flew, their pilots inherited a tradition. The knowledge that their aircraft had once pierced the aura of the most celebrated Western fighter. That story became quiet motivation. For Eagle crews, the lesson embedded itself in training culture. Never assume altitude equals safety. Never assume radar equals awareness. Always question the empty sky. Because the sky is never truly empty. Even today, when advanced data links and satellite integrations stretch across continents, there are still moments in combat exercises where two fighters converge visually, contrails intersecting like crossed blades. In that instant, history compresses. The ambush echoes. The lessons resurface. Air combat is a living conversation between generations. The MiG-29 and F-15 were not just machines. They were chapters in that conversation. Their encounters forced evolution, humbled assumptions, and sharpened doctrine on both sides of a divided world. And perhaps that is the true ending of the ambush story. Not a victory, not a defeat, but a transformation. Because in the thin air above mountains and deserts, where afterburners carve fire into blue emptiness, supremacy is never permanent. It is tested. As the contrails fade and the radar screens go dark, one truth remains. The sky never forgets. The day MiG-29s rose from beneath the mountains and caught F-15 Eagles off guard was more than just an encounter. It was a warning. A reminder that air superiority is not inherited. It is earned. Legends can dominate for decades, but it only takes seconds to challenge a myth. In the thin air above the battlefield, there are no permanent kings, only pilots who adapt faster than fear. If this story changed how you see modern air combat, if you felt the tension of that merge, if you believe the sky still hides untold rivalries, then the next story will shock you even more, because the Cold War may be over, but the duel for the skies never ends. Subscribe now and step back into the cockpit with us.